We are grateful to welcome our HOD and Center Head of Coracle Campus, Dr. S.A. Senthil Kumar sir, for joining us today. Sir, we welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sultan.
I would like to express my hearty welcome to the facilitator of this webinar, Professor Lalita Ramakrishnan, who has organized today's meet in the internet interest of us, the students. Ma'am, we welcome you. I passionately welcome all our teachers, Dr. D.M.H. Malini ma'am, Dr. Bayaman sir, and Dr. C. Madhavaya sir for gathering. Sir, we welcome you. Warm welcome to the heads of various departments and the faculty and non-teaching faculty. Last but not least, I welcome all my student friends from our own department and sister department of School of Management, our affiliated college and other institutes of management in the country. Once again, we welcome you all. I now call upon Professor K. Chandrasekhar sir, our Dean, to speak a few words on this occasion. Sir, please.
Thank you very much for this alumni web talks, which are likely to provide a lot of encouragement to the current batches of students, and that also provides a career path for the current batches of students, because our alumni will be sharing with us all the difficulties that he has passed to reach this highest level. At the outset, let me congratulate the unsung hero of the department, who is giving an interactive session or interactive presentation with the current batch of students. I'm very, very happy for the Department of Insurance, which has created an occasion like this, an executive development program, a webinar for the benefit of the current batches of students. I am able to see a good number of students have already joined, and this is a new area. This is related to cyber. So some of the students may not be very, very clear in the concept, therefore they will be joining little maybe on the way. But every one of us today we are facing some problem with respect to this cyber crimes, cyber related issues. So naturally, listening to the experts is likely to provide us lots of insights on the do's and do nots associated with our hard-earned incomes, hard-earned amounts. We are all, of course, the current batches of students, I know, they always wants to be always in touch with the web, the WhatsApp, Facebook, this type of websites, but they don't know how much damage is going on in the behind the scene. So this is the great occasion for all of us to learn from the practitioner, the learned alumni who is able to give a break and give a time for interacting back to the department and to the current batches of students. So I congratulate the, on behalf of the today's speaker, all the alumni who are likely to provide lots of inputs to the current batches of students. And also I congratulate the department for taking initiative on this arranging alumni talks and encouraging all our students. So this alumni talks slowly have to emerge out to be executive development programs or MTPs for the benefit of the students who are going out, those who are already in the field. They may be requiring some inputs, they may be requiring some continuation of learning. So this is occasion because the B school may not be able to put them back to the seat, but these occasions will keep them active and know about each other, and also they know about the current trends which are going on. Thereby they can build up their own career. I think with these few words, I wish a great success for this talk series, and these are all I wish this department to conduct much more of this type and make it as a series of presentations for the benefit of the alumni, for the benefit of the past alumni as well as the current students, as well as for the department. This is the feedback time that we also want to improve our syllabuses. We want to see the what are the trends in the current industry, and then accordingly design the course structure. So with these few words, I wish a great occasion, a great day for this organizing this event. More specifically, Lalita Ramakrishnan, who has taken initiative by her wide contacts. Maybe alumni are always in touch with her. Not only alumni, I think I have seen she has a very good network of industry executives. When that has helped her to provide lots of placement chances, placement opportunities for all our students, not only for the Karaikal campus but also for the main campus. I think this is a platform which will connect many of us back to the campus life. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to invite our HOD and Center Head of Karaikal Campus, Professor Dr. S. A. Senthil Kumar sir, to introduce our department. Sir, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sriram. The most respected Dean Sir, respected Coordinator Dr. Lalita Ma'am, learned faculty members, beloved resource persons of today's webinar, Mr. Suraj, my dear students and participants. A very warm good evening to all. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce the Department of Management to the participants. The Department of Management Studies was started at Karaikal campus in the academic year 2009-10. The department offers MBA in Insurance Management and PhD in Management. The MBA Insurance Management program was initiated by Pondicherry University to develop the department as a center for knowledge in the insurance field and to promote research in insurance industry through research programs, seminars, and workshops. To strengthen the industry-institute interface through association, consultancy, and participation in skill development program, we are taking many steps. The department is associated with Insurance Institute of India, Mumbai, and the syllabus, the curriculum of MBA Insurance Management has been recognized equivalent to Associateship of Insurance Institute of India, Mumbai. And the students are getting exemption up to associateship with few terms and conditions. And the department is having a very strong placement team. The department is placing more than 90% of the students from the inception. And past 5 years, we are placing 100% of students with the support of our dean, placement coordinator, faculty members, and strong alumni network. With these few words, and thank you for this opportunity. I welcome one and all present for this webinar series. Thank you, one and all.
I now call upon our Professor Dr. Lalita Ramakrishnan, who is the brain of behind this webinar and the series to continue. Madam, please, ma'am.
A very good evening to all of you. Honorable Dean of School of Management, who is always with us for all our academic events and placement initiatives. My most beloved colleague, Dr. Senthil Kumar, who is the Center Head of Karaikal Campus as well as the Head of the Department of Management at present. Teaching colleagues, Dr. Malini, professors from other institutions, Professor Vijay Lakshmi from Padmavati Mahila University, Dr. Sudarshan from Sri Venkateswara Institute of Management Studies, Tirupati, Dr. Niranjan Reddy, Professor of Rayalaseema Institute of Management, Professor Srinivasa Narayana from KL University, Professor Noor Firdaus Jahan from RV Institute of Management, Bangalore, executives from the industry like Mr. Pradeep Deep Singh, Deputy General Manager, IFCO Tokyo General Insurance Company, Haryana, Sri Sriram, Chief Executive Officer of Abans Environmental Services Private Limited, also executives from IFCO Tokyo, Tata AAG, Verisk Analytics India, Insurance Management Services Bahrain, Tamil Shopee Chennai, Karnataka Power Transmission Corporation, National Sales Training Center, and participants from 20 colleges from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Pondicherry, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Bahrain, Bihar, Uttarakhand, Karnataka, Haryana, and Andaman Nicobar Islands. And also participants from about 8 universities and 1 national institute of importance: Pondicherry University, KL University, Bharatiyar University, Gandhi Institute of Technology and Management, Deemed University, Bangalore, Sri Venkateswara University, Sri Padmavati Women's University, Sri Venkateswara Institute of Medical Sciences. There is also a doctor among the participants, and IIT Roorkee. Also from all our affiliated colleges across Pondicherry, Yanam, Mahe, and Karaikal. I really deem it a pleasure to organize this webinar and be a spectator on our students are doing everything from the front and back end. It all started in the classroom when one of the students asked me, "Ma'am, when we were working offline, you used to take us to the industry and give us industry exposure. How are we going to do it now with this pandemic?" Then this innovative idea of executive webinar series started. My first phone call was our first batch student, Mr. Suraj Teruvat, who was a star performer in the class, and he's now working as vice president at Willis Towers Watson, a consultancy firm with insurance vertical. And Suraj Reddy accepted to give this webinar, and we are in touch with more than 20 executives. One of our resource persons is among our audience today, the CEO of Abans Environmental Services Private Limited, Mr. Sriram, and many more of our alumnus are going to give us these series of executive webinars to give an exposure to our students voluntarily. This is a great time ahead for all of us and a great learning exercise. I think it's going to be a beautiful platform, and we all will enjoy the learning and intellectual inputs that Mr. Suraj is going to give us today. Thank you all.
I now hand over the mic to the teammate, Ms. Subhadra Selvi, to introduce our invited executive of today's event.
It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Shri Suraj Teruvat, alumnus of 2009-11 batch, which was the first batch of Pondicherry University Karaikal campus, presently working as Assistant Vice President, Financial Executive and Professional Risk, FINEX, Willis Towers Watson, India Insurance Brokers Private Limited, Chennai. He is our invited speaker of today, who is going to share his thoughts about cyber risk, a new age conundrum. Mr. Suraj Teruvat specializes in cyber risk insurance with a decade of combined experience in underwriting and broking of cyber risk insurance and other liability proposals of corporates of various sectors. Sir currently leads the Willis Cyber Risk Insurance business and associated initiatives in India. As a supplementary to this role, he also leads the client's engagements involving cyber loss quantification discussions. Mr. Suraj Teruvat was a successful liability lines underwriter at Tata AIG, who was campus placed as the first student from Karaikal campus prior to joining Willis Towers Watson. Prior to Tata AIG, he worked for Deloitte Consulting India Private Limited and was engaged in US healthcare industry consulting projects. Today, he will enlighten us on the topic cyber risk, a new era corporate conundrum, and will focus on the various facets of cyber risk and its implications on organizations, with the discussion points being motives, statistics, data privacy regulation impacting organizations, and the various types of financial losses and liabilities faced by organizations due to cyber breach or data breach incidents. These aspects will be helpful for us to understand the ethical aspects of business from the modern cyber system perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our alumnus, Mr. Suraj Teruvat. Please, sir, enlighten us with your vast experience and knowledge of cyber risk and liabilities, which is your domain. Thank you.
Good evening, one and all. I hope everybody is able to hear me. Dr. Chandrasekhar,
Yes.
Dr. Lalita, Dr. Sindhu, thank you for extending this invitation to flag off the webinar series with various industry executives. I feel this is indeed a privilege and an honor to be coming back to the university as an industry interface executive. I remember myself being on the other side of the table as a student, listening to various other corporate leaders whom the university invited while I was a student. But again, yeah, it is indeed, a full circle that the life has brought in, where I am on the other side of the table, and I take it as a privilege and a proud moment for myself. And yeah, thank the university for having created the kind of values and the foundations in me, which helped me grow within the corporate ladder as an executive. So, I would welcome you all to this particular session around cyber risk, which is a new age conundrum. So I hope you all understand that what cyber risk is. Basically, I hope you would have all read about what cyber risk is. So it is just a combination of vulnerabilities and threats which impact the sanctity of information and communication systems. Let it be information and communication systems associated with countries or corporations or any sort of organization. Cyber risks are impacting economies and organizations equally in the modern age. Let me present, a presentation which I have prepared. Just a moment. So the agenda of today's discussions, I would like to give you an overview of what cyber risks are and what are the kinds of various threat vectors which are impacting organizations, why organizations are concerned about this particular risk. Then we will look at some of the loss scenarios based on the knowledge that I, have gained in my experience working with various corporations, and also learning from Willis Towers Watson's global cyber claims experience. We'll be talking about how then cyber risk management is being carried out, and what sort of avenues that organizations are exploring in trying to assess and manage the cyber risk. And then I just also wanted to discuss about certain research avenues which, for the benefit of the students, they can delve into and look at bringing out some research paper around this particular topic. So moving on, why are organizations concerned in the recent times? Well, we cannot imagine any organization or any a country which is not dependent on computer systems, network connectivity, information and communication technologies in order to generate revenue and in terms of its productivity. So every organization is in some or the other way connected to various parts of the world through the technology platforms that they are developing or they are dependent upon in terms of carrying out their business. Even manufacturing sector, for that matter of fact, which was considered to be late in adopting the automation of their production activities and the business activities, have caught up with the trend where the advent of various industrial control systems and various IoT systems have automated the process of manufacturing. So there is no sector, I would say, in the current times, which is devoid of its dependence on computer systems and network connectivity. So let's face that particular fact. With this interconnectivity and automation of business, there is a particular property which is being developed, which is being regarded as the world's most valuable resource. Any guesses? What is the world's most valuable resource in the recent times?
Data.
Exactly, it's data. Data has long surpassed oil as the world's most valuable resource. Some of the most powerful companies, organizations across the globe, like Google, Amazon, Facebook, their entire business is dependent on the kind of data that they are harnessing, they are developing through their business processes. And through the data that they control, they are able to control most of the business activities across the globe. In fact, times have come where some of these companies have started dictating terms to countries as well. We've seen that in recent news articles as well. So with this data being generated across the globe, the concern of and asides data, the mere dependence of the businesses on network connectivity, computer systems, interconnectivity, everything, it's getting exposed to cyber risk, because again, some hacker sitting at one end of the one corner of the world can just act upon a particular vulnerability in a company's computer system, and can get away with huge amounts of data which can be sold in the darknet to make money as such. So yes, organizations are concerned. So with this ubiquity of data, so data is all pervasive nowadays. Organizations are dependent, organizations are interdependent, organizations are interconnected. So there is nothing known as domestic company as a concept nowadays. It's a concept of multinational organizations, globalization of business. And this globalization of business plus the ubiquity of data is together, creating immense pressure on the top management of the organizations, because while business is expanding, their database is expanding, and this database expanding will expose them to umpteen number of cyber threats, which we will be discussing in the next few slides. But again, the most important concern that the directors and officers, the boards, and the C-suite executives within the organizations are concerned about is whether they could get exposed to stringent data privacy regulations across the globe because of a data breach in their system. Someone hacking into their system and exporting out key confidential corporate information or personally identifiable information and exposing it on the public domain, or selling it in the dark net. But again, that getting exposed to the outside world can expose them, not only expose them to data privacy regulation breaches, but also really tarnish the reputation that these organizations carry on their business ethics and their cybersecurity aspects and everything. So this is something which keeps the board of directors and the C-suite executives of organizations awake during the nights. The mere interconnectivity of the systems and the automation of business itself is creating a lot of pressure, because again, if the integrity of the computer systems is affected, it can affect, and it can directly affect the income source of organizations. Not only that, organizations could incur huge expenses in order to revive their systems to normalcy. So which is a very, very expensive proposition. This is something which organizations are not exposed to. Organizations have seen traditional risk components like fire, earthquake, flooding and stuff like that, but they haven't experienced the impact of a cyber attack or a data breach from their systems, which the world is getting introduced to right now. And the kind of financial impact that these organizations are facing is impeccable. For example, IBM came out with a report in association with Ponemon Institute, which is available in the public domain. It's known as Cost of Data Breach report. So every year they come out with this particular report. In India itself, the cost of a data breach or a cost of a cyber attack for any organization costs any organization on an average close to $2 million, which is in the current parlance about 15 crore rupees in terms of responding, loss of productivity, liabilities, everything put together. It costs a company about close to 15 crore rupees, which is $2 million. Global average is about $5 to $6 million. India is not there yet, but again, yes, $2 million is still a significant loss any organization can face on an average. Plus, regulatory compliance is a growing concern. Multinational organizations are exposed to not only their domestic data privacy regulations, but global data privacy regulations. We'll be discussing that in the next few slides. With data privacy regulations and the concern around data privacy becoming coming of age and becoming the most important risk consideration, various contracts between two companies have important clauses around confidentiality and responsibility around data breaches. So in a way, organizations are also trying to transfer their financial implications arising from a data breach onto the service provider if there is any sort of a breach incident at the supplier or the service provider's end. So contractually as well, the financial implications of a cyber attack or a data breach is being transferred between organizations whenever they engage together. Again, there are no enough risk transfer mechanisms like insurance. All the traditional insurances like the asset insurance and everything have been developed in an era where there were no cyber risks. There was not much of automation in those days. All that the organizations used to worry is about the risk of fire, risk of flood, or risk of inundation. But the risk of cyber was never discussed at that point of time. So there has been a glaring gap in terms of coverage for losses arising out of cyber risk manifestation in the traditional insurance policies also. So organizations are not able to fully recover the losses from their traditional insurance solutions, which is also creating a concern. And then the whole aspect of incident response, because the sophistication of attacks is so I can say so adept and so technologically advanced that organizations take time to recover from such breach incidents or attacks, which can create not only business interruption losses for the organizations, but also can lead to liabilities on organizations because they are not able to deliver their deliverables as per their SLAs. But also if their revenue sources are totally dependent on connectivity of the systems. For example, an e-commerce business where everything is sold, the business itself runs on the internet. A network disruption can immediately start causing business losses. So responding to incidents is also something the organizations have their teams set within the organization. But again, the mere sophistication of these attacks is to such an extent that it takes, still in spite of having dedicated teams within the organization, it takes time for the organizations to recover fully, recover their processes, recover their hosted computing services to normalcy. So these are aspects, various kinds of factors which are around cyber risk, which are keeping the boards, the C-suite executives of organizations, and in fact even economies worried because the implications are so great. So let's look at, let's try to understand what are the various threat vectors. So by threat, what do you mean? So all you students would have gone through the subject of risk management. In risk management, what is the threat? A threat is a factor through which a vulnerability is acted upon. Right, so there could be a vulnerability. For example, you would have all read about WannaCry ransomware attack. So WannaCry ransomware attack is something which is a malware which was developed in order to infect systems which are not patched enough, which are not patched with the latest updates which the operating systems providers released. So WannaCry ransomware was a kind of malware which went and encrypted the files of unpatched computer systems which were not patched with an update from Microsoft. This happened way back between 2016 and 2017. This was one of the most widely talked about ransomware attacks and one of the first of its kind which caused global disruption and huge financial losses. So in this case, the threat is the malware, but the vulnerability is nothing but the unpatched operating system. So threat acts upon a vulnerability and then causes the risk which organizations are aware about. So we are studying various kinds of threats which can act upon the vulnerabilities within a system in order to cause a cyber breach incident or a attack. So the most important threat vector is the insiders, the malicious insider or the negligent insider. These are nothing but the very employees of the organization. So there are two kinds of employees within an organization when it comes to them being considered as a malicious the threat vector. One is an employee who's not aware of the cybersecurity measures, objectives, and policies of the organization, who's not trained enough, or who's not cyber aware, doesn't know the hygiene practices in order to avoid breach incidents. And there is another group of employees who knows everything, but again just wants to circumvent the whole process in order to get their things done. So the first one is the most commonly, what would I say, for the lack of the better word, the most commonly targeted segments within the employee base. That is the negligent insider who just is not aware, so they fall prey to these spear phishing emails. There are emails which come in with various subjects, and there are attachments in those particular emails which are laden with malwares and malicious codes of whatever nature, and they just end up clicking. These emails, phishing emails, are designed in a way that they create sort of curiosity in the reader in order to click onto whatever link or attachment that is provided. Could come with various subjects, could be coming in from the IT department, so frantically you might go and click on it. So these are the kinds of employees. But there are employees who, in order to get their processes done, their work done, they circumvent laid processes within the organization. In the process, they create vulnerabilities which are acted upon by hackers in order to enter the systems. So about more than 66% of the cyber breach incidents, the attacks across the globe, reported across the globe, are because of the act of employees, either a negligent act or a malicious act. There could be malicious employees also who are disgruntled by what has happened to them within the organization. They know the processes, they know the computer systems, they are highly educated, and they can create computer disruptions. We have seen claims and losses where a malicious employee caused systems disruption and system failure. So this is one of the biggest threat vector. Then comes the criminal hackers. Criminal hackers, they have two intentions. One, either to hit and run, or DDoS attack is one of the commonly used examples where a hacker just keeps loading they just open up so many pages of a particular website. They load that particular website through their technological means to such an extent that the servers give away and the website crashes. So these are known as DDoS attacks. And in the end, what happens is that the service provider is unable to host its service because there is so much of load, on the servers. So there are, events where hackers, they just want to show off themselves, or they have a malicious intent to hit a particular organization's website to cause them reputational injury. So they'd bring down or deface the websites and stuff like that. Or there is another new kind of malware which has been developed. You would have all read about ransomwares. What are ransomwares? Ransomwares are malwares which are designed to encrypt data files within computer systems which have a particular vulnerability against which these malwares are designed against. So these malwares are just released into the World Wide Web through various means and technological means, and they spread through lateral movements through computer systems. Whatever computer system is patched enough or has the security walls, it just passes through, and from that computer system it laterally moves to other computer system. That's how it spreads across the world. And because of the interconnectivity of the systems, these ransomwares are able to move quickly within networks and various geographies. So what happens in the process is whatever infected systems, whatever systems are unpatched, these systems are getting encrypted by these malwares called as ransomwares. So what happens is the users of these infected computer systems are unable to access the systems because they are just totally encrypted, and data files are not accessible, and these hackers demand money in the form of cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is the most common kind of a cryptocurrency which is extorted by these hacktivist groups. And that is why Bitcoin is also growing in value. Today, one Bitcoin costs about $57,000. Earlier, just a year and a half back, it was costing about $5,000 to $10,000. So the value of Bitcoin is also growing, and cryptocurrency is one of the most secure ways where these hacking groups can trade amongst themselves without being detected because of the mere technology that the Bitcoin is based upon. Then we are aware of malwares, various kinds of spear phishing emails and everything. What happens is, through malwares, hackers just hack into the systems. They could either act immediately by causing whatever financial losses for the organization, or whatever they are designed against. But there are certain malwares which are designed in order to lie low and undetected within the systems. And over a period of time, they are used by the hackers to examine the various functions within the organization, and then they create various kinds of fraudulent communications in order to extort money, or fraudulently generate money through fraudulently generated communications within the system. These are known as social engineering frauds. Or they could also lie low in the systems, and confidentially and without any detection, they can export out key corporate information out of the systems, and which can be used to either threaten the company that we can release this onto the public domain, which will cause you financial loss and reputational injury, so you have to pay us money. Or what they can do is they can secretly sell this on another kind of web system called as dark web, which is a sub-internet system which is not easily accessible by everybody. But again, this is the dark web is the place where all the hackers trade their services, their findings, and their exploits. So these are the various threat vectors within the criminal hacker groups which organizations are facing. Then organizations are also exposed to hacktivists and cyber terrorism events. One such example is NotPetya ransomware attack, which happened in, I think, between 2017 and 18. This was again claimed to be a malware which was designed by Russia to bring down the economy of Ukraine, but again had a surface attack area across the globe. It went beyond Ukraine's territories and impacted organizations across the globe. Organizations like Maersk Shipping, Merck, which is a global pharma company, got impacted by this particular ransomware attack called as NotPetya. So organizations can fall prey to large distributed attacks, which are not directed at them specifically, but again, in the process, because of having a particular vulnerability, they fall prey to large distributed attacks. Either the distributed attacks could be in the form of ransomware attacks, or it could be just because they belong to an industry which is being targeted by another economy. Like, for example, you would have all read about the energy sector and the ports, various ports within the country being attacked by Chinese hackers. So these are state-sponsored hacktivist groups with an intention to bring down particular economies in order to thrust their political opinion onto a particular company. So cyber espionage, cyber attacks are being used as a new age weapon against economies, by economies. So this is one such example. So organizations in the process can fall to a distributed cyber terrorism event. Then the last one is, which is again becoming a common threat vector for organizations, which is third-party risks. Now, third-party risks is coming through the means of third-party service providers and vendors, which a particular organization gets aligned with in order to either outsource a part of their functions or a part of their services. But again, in the process of outsourcing, what happens is, while they outsource, they do not outsource the complete liabilities. So if there is, so there could be hosted services where a particular company would have a technology, but it integrates a technology from a third party service provider in order to improve its overall technology service offering. But in the process, what happens is if there is a breach in the third party's service providers networks, it could either creep into this particular organization's networks and cause disruption and various other losses. But also what happens is if there are data processes which are outsourced, where this organization's confidential data is being provided to the third party service provider in order to provide outsourced services. In that particular sense, what happens is if there is a data breach from the service provider's end, this organization's confidential data can also get out in the process, exposing this particular organization to liabilities and data privacy regulations. So these are the different kinds of threat vectors that we are getting to see. Let's look at the various data privacy regulations that have come in, and this is what is keeping the corporates very worried nowadays, because again, with ubiquity of data, with interconnectivity of system, with globalization of business, while this is, like I said, it's increasing the business prospects for the organizations, but also it is exposing them to the data privacy regulations of countries across the globe. US leads the bandwagon when it comes to some of the most stringent data privacy regulations. It started off with the HIPAA regulation, which came out in 1996. HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And the problem with US is every state within US has its own data privacy regulation, which is again, governed by a federal data privacy regulation. So, organizations having their businesses or services to various states, organizations within the various states of US have to comply with the specific regulations in those states. Not only the federal will also come into picture, so which complicates the whole aspect of adherence to data privacy regulations. So as you see, as time passed, various other countries adopted their own data privacy regulations in order to safeguard their own internal data sources and to localize their data. India is also on the verge of coming out with its own data privacy data protection act, which is being looked into by the government, and we might see in the next couple of months this might be out, which would increase the concern around data privacy within India, as well as as such the concept of data localization within India will come into picture. One of the most significant data privacy regulations which organizations across the globe are concerned about, and this particular regulation known as General Data Protection Regulation, which came out in European Union. It was instituted in the year 2018 on 25th May and was adopted by all the European Union countries. This has changed the way the data privacy regulations are looked at, because it's regarded as one of the most stringent data privacy regulations in the globe. One of the things it did is that it made organizations beyond the purview or the geography of European Union countries also liable if European Union citizens' data is being processed by such organizations. So in the process, for example, an Indian BPO or any IT service provider providing service to a European Union based company, and in the process through its services or through its technology that is providing, ends up processing or in any way gets in contact with the personally identifiable information of European Union citizens, then that particular organization, whether or not it has a subsidiary in European Union or not, is liable to comply with the guidelines of General Data Protection Regulation. So some of the most stringent, it's the guidelines as such is set under GDPR are very stringent. For an example, privacy by design is an example is an expectation under GDPR, which means that every business process or technology or service that you provide has to have privacy, information security within its roots. So every process or every technology has to get itself tested and be compliant with all the information security guidelines that are set under GDPR. For that matter of fact, any data breach within which is happening either by companies within European Union or externally, but again processing European Union data, if there is a data breach from their systems, they have to notify this to the regulator and the data subjects within 72 hours of such things happening. 72 hours is too small a timeline for organizations to even understand what has happened in their systems, let alone understanding that there is a data breach. So some of the very stringent regulations that have come up. Large data breaches and gross violations of GDPR regulations can cost organizations fines and penalties up to 20 million euros or 4% of the global revenue of the companies, which is this particular fine or penalty is regarded as one of the highest amongst the data privacy regulations across the globe. And we've already seen, so I'll not take names of organizations which have already got fined under GDPR for data breaches, but again, if you browse the internet, you will see some of the most reputed organizations across the globe being filed multi-million euros or multi-million dollars in quantum as fines and penalties for them having breached the GDPR guidelines. Willis Towers Watson came out with a global cyber claims report in 2020, which where we have collated our experience of experience of having handled various kinds of cyber breach incidents and data breach incidents and associated losses for our clientele across the globe. So for your information, Willis Towers Watson is operating out of 120 plus jurisdictions with about close to 50,000 employee base. We are in various kinds of risk, human capital consulting, and broking advisory services for our clientele across the globe. So as such, from the year 2013, if we take a timeline between 2013 to 2020, we have handled about close to 1,200 claims. These are cyber loss incidents that we have handled as cyber risk insurers for our clientele across the globe. These claims are reported from about 55 plus jurisdictions across the globe. The average claim that we've seen, putting the overall global average together, the loss quantum for companies is about $4.88 million. So that's the global average of a cyber breach incident for a company as a loss. Now, if you see the trend, since 2013, the number of claims that we've been handling, has just, constantly and continually been increasing over the years. As we speak, this year itself, we are between 2020 and 2021, we've been handling about 595 claims across the globe already. And, learning has been that data breaches are the most frequent kind of losses, which are creating liabilities and response costs for the organizations in terms of losses. But again, in terms of the quantum of loss, it is the ransomware attack and business disruption loss which has caused the most serious kind of financial implication for the organization. So the average ask from a ransomware attack nowadays is about $1 million. And average business disruption itself for manufacturing entities, if we were to talk about manufacturing entities, a cyber attack could cause an average, a global average of about in excess of $1 million in a matter of couple of days of non-activity of production for companies. So these are two aspects which are causing the most amount of losses for the companies. And these are multi-million dollar losses that we are talking about. Social engineering fraud has also emerged as one of the most prevalent threat vector, where either someone impersonates top management executives to effect a fund transfer and the company loses money, or there are vendor invoicing frauds where the invoices are being manipulated, where the company ends up paying an invoice from a vendor, but again with a manipulated wire transfer detail, company ends up losing money. These are the kinds of losses that the organizations are also seeing, and this one aspect has seen immense amount of spurt during pandemic times. Social engineering frauds. So whatever terminologies that I'm using, I would request you all the students, to go back and research about these terminologies and what sort of losses are these causing. This is where you learn. Some of the areas where most of the cyber attacks have been caused is, again, as explained by me earlier, human error is one of the most significant aspect. And then there is security breach at a vendor or a third party, which is contributing the next most. So about more than 50% is coming. 50% of the losses that we've seen is between human error and security breaches at a service provider or a vendor site, which is causing most of the losses for the organization. So these are some of the losses, and this report is available on the public domain. You can go into Willis Towers Watson's website and download this report and read through it. Will give you good insights about what sort of losses are being faced by corporate organizations across the globe. So I'll just quickly run through these things. The next slide, which is the key exposed sectors. So ITES sector is seeing increased ransomware attacks, DDoS attacks, malware and phishing attacks. There is a spurt in social engineering frauds as well. And they can always have an exposure where they can fall prey to a cyber terrorism event. Manufacturing entities are now the prime target of ransomware attacks, because hackers have realized that productivity losses can cost manufacturing entities millions. So they are able to extort money within short periods of them introducing a ransomware campaign into a manufacturing entity's systems, depending on how much that entity's production activity is automated. But again, there are aspects like man-in-the-middle attacks. Man-in-the-middle attacks is nothing but someone lying low in your systems and then modifying various communications to exploit money or fund transfers, generate fund transfers, or in a way manipulate fund transfers so that the hacker ends up getting the money. So these are all known as man-in-the-middle attacks. You can research about these terminologies, will give you good idea. Social engineering fraud is again a very common observation amongst manufacturing entities. And then there is espionage and cyber terrorism and distributed attacks that they can fall prey to. Banking institutions again have been the prime targets for cyber attacks and data breaches. I would request you all to go and read about the attack on Cosmos Bank, which was, I would say, is one of the most sophisticated attack. The hacking campaign was initiated and coordinated from 25 countries in order to siphon off about 100+ crores from this bank systems, and that too the bank did not even get to know when this was happening. So this is something which you can read about and you'll understand the kind of sophistication of attacks, these attacks that are being directed against banking and financial institutions. Again, various kinds of threat vectors are there, but again, commonly observed ones are Swift code manipulations, theft of personally identifiable information and card information from their servers, and social engineering frauds. They can always fall prey to cyber attack or terrorism event. I'll not take much time, but again, healthcare is similar thing. Man-in-the-middle attacks, phishing, malware, social engineering frauds have been seen. Marine and shipping industries have increasingly fallen prey to ransomware attacks. Please read about the cyber attack on Maersk Shipping and Logistics Company, which is one of the world's foremost logistics companies. It is a very interesting article to read. So it would give you an idea of the sophistication of attack and how shipping and logistics industry can get impacted by cyber breach incidents. E-commerce, again, has immense personally identifiable information and card information data piles, which can be exported out by the hackers. by various hacking campaigns, and these can be sold in the darknet. So e-commerce is one area where a lot of phishing campaigns, directed and sophisticated malware attacks to export out confidential corporate information occurs. Social engineering frauds, cyber terrorism, and ransomware attacks is one aspect which they can fall prey to. Please read about Target, the attack on Target, chain of supermarkets, which costed them $1 billion in losses. You can read about how a retailer got affected by cyber attacks. Target is the chain of market supermarkets. So how do organizations manage this complex risk? Because again, it has a way of manifesting itself through various means, through various measures, because there are various threat vectors. So there are various avenues through which cyber hackers can get into the system. So gone are the days where organizations could sleep peacefully just by strengthening their perimeters, that technology perimeters like firewalls and various other antivirus systems and everything. These are no longer equipped enough to handle the sophistication of these attacks, because the source through which these attacks are emanating from is quite different and diversified. So organizations have to move into a more mature way of risk management, which is a holistic approach known as cyber resilience. So cybersecurity, the topic of cybersecurity is maturing into the topic of cyber resilience amongst organizations. So what is cyber resilience? Cyber resilience is nothing but ensuring that information security percolates into, the people, the processes, and the technology, the people, process, and technology aspects within the company. So what do I mean by that? That your people, that is the employees, are one of the biggest sources of cyber breach campaigns. So why not train them? Why not create awareness sessions within the employee sections? Why not train them when they join the organizations? Why not train them from a process specific standpoint? If they are being transferred from one particular section within the company to another section or another function, give them specific cyber security trainings, information security trainings, and have mechanisms to periodically review the effectiveness of these trainings through various methods. Capital, in terms of capital risk, how do you have mechanisms in risk identification? How do you identify the various cyber threat vectors? How do you analyze them in terms of their impact and their frequency? Because impact and frequency together gives you the overall criticality of that particular threat, a cyber threat vector for a particular organization. And how do you evaluate which of the cyber threats is the most, which has to be more prioritized from a risk perspective? So there has to be an elaborate mechanism within the information security management systems in order to identify, analyze, and evaluate risks, and treat them. Treating a particular risk by risk avoidance, or the concept of risk mitigation by reducing the incidence of that particular risk, or transfer that particular risk through various mechanisms, either transfer it onto another entity or transfer it by a mechanism of alternate risk transfer mechanism. There are various mechanisms of transferring or treating a particular risk. So organizations have to have a set process where top management has to keep reviewing these aspects from time to time, evaluate new evolving risks from time to time, especially around cyber breach campaigns and data breach incidents. Then comes the technology aspect. How do you employ technology, technology products in order to keep assessing and keep managing the cyber risks within your systems and also externally? So in that particular process, you end up employing various sorts of advanced technologies in order to secure your perimeter and also enhance the overall efficiency of the processes, the monitoring of the processes from a technology standpoint. All these aspects and activities together will give you a holistic approach towards managing a complex risk like cyber risk. And that is where the concept of cyber resilience comes into picture. And that is where people like us help clients by understanding, by helping them assess the risk, quantify the risk, and also transfer the risk onto a alternate risk transfer mechanism. So how do organizations assess risk and manage the cyber risk? So there are various kinds of approaches. I mean, there is no foolproof mechanism nowadays, and everybody is in a learning curve. And the best of the organizations who are involved in cybersecurity advisory for organization, they are also in a learning curve because it's an ever evolving subject. So the most common aspects, commonly observed practices are there is a three approach aspect that companies employ. One is the process approach, that the other is technology approach, and then there is way of transferring the risk, which is, again, I'll talk about the insurance aspect. Within process, organizations have to classify their information assets, the various kinds of data that they have. What is, from the point of view of their criticality to the business, and also if such data gets breached, what could be the impact, whether they fall under a high, medium, low impact, or a high, medium, low criticality for the overall business. So this classification of information assets or data assets has to very, very importantly happen, not only from a pan organizational standpoint, but again from a functional standpoint also. Every function, like a finance function, the human capital function, the business function, every function has to recognize its information assets from and classify these information assets. And then then upon prioritizing them, you have various information security management systems. There are various guidelines. There are various world standards like ISO 27001 2013 is one information security management system. Then you have NIST standard. Then you have something known as COVID 5, which is again one of the most evolving subjects and being increasingly being imbibed by organizations. So there are various standards where various kinds of information assets have to be handled as such. But again, the overall idea is that every activity, every technology that the organization employs has the acts in a way that it secures information assets according to the criticality and the impact that it could have if it gets breached. So this is the overall aspect of managing the information security aspect, which is the process. This is also known as information security management system. Then there is a technology approach where you, as an organization, from time to time, do various kinds of assessments using various kinds of technology products. Like there is something known as cyber posture analysis. There are various technology-backed solutions which can rate a particular organization's cybersecurity preparedness or maturity and give ratings and can give them advices as to what are the vulnerabilities in the online facing domains, IPs and systems which are showing vulnerabilities based on the technology. There are other aspects like vulnerability assessment. This is known as VAPT, which is commonly being utilized by organization. They just utilize the services of external vendors who try to penetrate the systems of the company using various mechanisms and see how resilient the cybersecurity preparedness of the organization is. They test the resilience of the systems, the technology systems, which are securing the perimeters of the company. Then there are informatics where companies pull data and buy data from various agencies, which give them data about various cyber hacking campaigns that are running currently, dark web chatter, where there are companies which also are present in the dark web and can give companies information whether their data is being discussed within the hacking community and all that stuff. So information security officers also keep their ears open to the overall chatter around the company in the dark web. Then there are techniques like where we help in terms of they'll help the companies understand the loss potential if there is a cyber attack. So okay, fine, I've put all the measures. Even if these fail, what could be the maximum implication or financial implication that the company can have? They need to understand that in order to see if that particular financial implication falls within the risk appetite of the company. Please read about risk appetite, what a risk appetite is. So if it goes beyond, they have to think about transferring that financial impact onto a alternative risk financing mechanism, where insurance could be one of the solutions, or self-financing could be one of the solutions, or reinsurance pools. There are various mechanisms through which the financial impact of a particular risk can be transferred if it falls beyond the risk appetite. Then there are, endpoint detection and response systems, which is again very commonly discussed topic. You can read about it, where endpoints, which are laptops and individual systems within the company, are monitored individually to see if there are any behaviors or any activities which are malicious in nature. Instead of observing the overall posture of the organization, this system, this EDR system, monitors every system within an organization. So these are various technology aspects. Then comes the insurance. So I have put all measures. I've analyzed the risk. I have quantified the risk. I understand how much risk I have. If that risk falls beyond my appetite, what do I do? So you can transfer this onto a risk transfer mechanism known as cyber risk insurance. I'll not go deep into cyber risk insurance, but this is a insurance which organizations are increasingly buying in order to transfer the implications of a loss scenario from a cyber attack on their systems. So it covers the forensic advisory costs, various kinds of breach response costs, data reconstitution costs. It also absorbs the loss of net profits, that is the business interruption loss, which is caused by a cyber attack. It covers the damages and defense costs if the company becomes liable for having breached the confidentiality of data because of a cyber attack on their systems. Third parties, including corporates and individuals, can proceed against a company. So this policy pays for the defense costs as well as the damages if they are found to be liable to pay such damages to companies. Or this particular policy also pays fines and penalties, which the companies become liable to if they are found to be breaching a particular data privacy law because of a cyber breach incident in their systems. So again, there is a caveat that the fine or penalty has to be insurable by a law, but again, this provision is still there in insurance. So this is a fast growing business across the globe. Now currently it is about $5.5 billion gross written premium business as of end of 2018, and early 2019 data that I have, it's about $5.5 billion in gross written premium of global cyber risk insurance business. And it's growing at a CAGR of about 30 to 35% year on year. And this is the business that I head at Willis Towers Watson, in advising the companies to understand what's their loss potential and transferring and structuring a policy which optimally transfers the loss potential onto an insurance solution. So that takes to the end of the session. So these are some of the research topics that I thought that the students within the university can, work upon. Please read about the various global data privacy regulations and their implications on the corporates. Look at bringing out an article around that. GDPR is one good topic that you can talk about. How GDPR corresponds to the requirement of insurance. Please do a research around that. Ransomware is also increasing the loss potential for organizations. Please research about that and come out with mechanisms where organizations can transfer the loss potential onto an alternate risk with financing mechanism. Read about cyber risk assessment processes. Try to come out with a paper around that. And people risk. How can organizations effectively manage the people risk threat vector, which is impacting the overall cyber risk exposure for the organization? So these are some of the topics that I would like to see the insurance management batch to work upon and come out with some articles, some content on behalf of the university in the near future. So that takes it to the end of the session. Thank you all for the intent listening. I hope this was a good learning experience for you all. Gave you a good perspective of how what kind of financial impact and why organizations are concerned about cyber risk. And it's definitely a conundrum that organizations are currently, because they are not fully equipped to deal with this particular risk at this point of time. Everybody is in a learning curve, and this is an ever evolving subject. Thank you all.
Thank you, Suraj. Thank you. It's a great learning for all of us. Very great lecture. Good. I think as a faculty, we are hearing to this cyber risk premium or risk insurance for the first time. And you have given a very good presentation, because I work in the banking technology department, wherein some exposure is there on this cyber related issues. There are 2-3 issues that I want to. Now,
Yeah.
now that you have already identified and then you have started giving awareness, and so how to catch this ultimately the thieves behind the scene? Is there any mechanism thieves behind the scene? Of course, this is becoming organized crime now. Whether why our police system is not able to rise up to these changing requirements of the cyber crimes. Another side, I look at as a technology teacher, I look at there is a need for some small amount of teaching the ethical hacking to the students, so to encourage them to try. But then only I will understand how the thief will work. So maybe as a part of course, although it is not ethical to put such course as ethical hacking or hacking itself, maybe in some other name, if I can put them into some practice sessions and to know about how there is a possibility, how the signals of this dark web can be seen by the students at the student age, because many of us will get caught with unaware. And although occasionally people like you, when we give lecture, we will all be afraid that day we will not sleep properly, because we're all afraid of our own diagnosis and all that. So still, there is a need for some mechanism to make it as a science and then make it to the classroom level discussion and classroom level interaction. And you have given a very beautiful presentation about the whole scenario, and we are very happy that you are emerging out to be one of the expert in this particular area. Maybe in the entire country, you are not listening to this type of lectures, and you are emerging out to be. We are proud of you are a product of our School of Management, Pondicherry University.
Thank you, sir.
So
You rightly said that this is an ever evolving subject. Everybody is in a learning curve, like I said. Yeah, there are a couple of hackers who are getting caught, but again, the level of sophistication where hackers are able to mask themselves, mask their sources. There's the source through which they are attacking. They are able to mask it, because again, I've learned through various sources that hackers are able to show their location to various countries. Every minute their location, their IP changes when they are on a cyber breach campaign. So what happens is, even if investigatory agency like a police department is trying to track down a particular hacking campaign, what happens is the source of the attack shows us various countries. It's not one particular IP address. So yeah, the level of sophistication of attacks are going up considerably. The other aspect is hackers are also becoming very bold nowadays. They are forming groups, like you can read about Revil. Revil is one ransomware hacking organization which is extorting money from organizations by saying that we are this particular group. We are, and most of these hacking agencies or groups are backed by state actors. So, for example, there'll be a group which is backed by China. There'll be a group which is backed by Russian government, and they are used by Russian government for or Chinese government for various other campaigns against the country. And they are left free to do any sort of other financial frauds, because they cannot be caught, because the government is also in a way protecting them. And that's where it is becoming difficult to catch hold of these and put an end to their campaign. Technologies are coming up, but again, the level at which their sophistication is improving is better than the technological advances that we are seeing.
Good. Thank you. But this entire the earlier we have been hearing about only money laundering cases, few cases here and there. But now this money laundering and as well as hacking together, keeping the entire cyber environment, the cyber secure environment itself is in danger. Thank you for your efforts of creating awareness among mankind and also your brilliance is so many of us, many of the IT and insurance companies, they will look at us. Somewhere there is a hedging process. There is a possibility of hedging some of it. How you estimate it, how deeply you get into the whole process of estimating the level of risk, and how do you price your product. That itself is a big subject. Maybe you are all into the business. Those interested students who take up some specific elective will interact with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Suraj. Excellent.
I'd like to just leave one piece of advice for my beloved juniors at Karaikal campus. Please read and equip yourself about cyber risk management concepts, cyber risk insurance. Please read a lot because again, this is one very fastly growing area of business within the corporate general insurance, within not only within India but again across the country. So whenever you go out for interviews with various insurers, this is going to be one of the topics which is predominantly being is going to be asked. I would suggest you all equip yourself well about this particular topic. This is a hot take right now in the industry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thiru,
As our dean sir said, excellent presentation. It was very useful,
Thank you,
particularly
sir.
this is a fastest growing sector, particularly liability and the cyber risk. Suresh, can you explain something about this hacking of electronic health data? And is there any regulations which is supporting that is particularly
Absolutely,
Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act and all you say,
absolutely,
whether it is
absolutely.
having any control?
Yeah. So health records is there is an acronym used for health records which is PHI, protected health information in US, which is one of the most sensitive data that any organization can have. If there is an organization which is handling a US health record, they have to comply with HIPAA compliance guidelines. Same is the case with various other countries. If you're handling health records of a European Union customer, you not only come under the purview of GDPR, but again there are other data protection regulations. So health records is one of the most stringently regulated data type across the globe. So yes, that's one area which is of huge concern for organizations.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you.
Mr. Suraj Thiruvan. Hello.
Yes, I can
Yes,
hear
I
you.
am Professor P.V. Narsaya from Commerce Department, SP University. I
Right.
want to say we are very much inspired by our intellectual talk. For that, we are happy. But I want to seek some clarifications from you.
Please.
Almost a majority of the people in the country are using cell phones, which is a common phenomenon.
Right.
But I don't think, they are not aware of the cyber crimes and which authority is regulating all these things and where this department is functioning. That are all unknown to us. And moreover, many educational institutions, almost all students are using cell phones.
Yeah.
So, what are the dangers that accrue from the overcharging of cell phones? And if you misutilize, what is that? If you're not in a position to use the cell phones for all these things, there must be some training to the students. And
Absolutely.
in our courses, it is better to include certain topics or a separate paper with regard to the cyber crimes and how to overcome the cyber crimes and which authorities that we have to approach. So,
Sure.
what is your ideology in this regard?
Sir, a very good thought, and in fact, a pertinent issue that you brought out. In fact, what's happening is in India, unfortunately, data privacy is not regulated to the stringent levels that we see in other countries. for example, US or Europe, who have very stringent data privacy regulations. In India, the only data privacy regulation is the IT Information Act, IT Act 2000, where only couple of sections like Section 43A, Section 72, these are various sections which deal with the aspect of data privacy. The problem is that while there are stringent regulations in India, there is no data privacy authority in India which is yet established and having the authority to
I
regulate.
think the police department is looking after these cyber crimes.
Police authority only has the authority to investigate crimes, but not
Okay.
cover the aspect of data privacy.
But which department is dealing with these
There's
things?
no department as such. So
So is it? I think it is inevitable nowadays.
yes, and that is where Indian government is rightly working towards, bringing out its own data privacy law, which was supposed to come out in February, but again, due to various, advices coming in from various sections of the society, they are redrafting the law, and I think within the next couple of months, the
Okay.
Personal Data Protection Act, PDP Act,
Yes,
going to
yes.
come out in India, which is not only going to govern how a personally identifiable information is going to be used by organizations, but also will bring in regulations of localization of data within India. So, but again, so you rightly said that awareness, creation of awareness. Everybody is using a BYOD device. Bring your own device. Everybody has access to mobile phones, so they can fall prey to cyberbullying, cyber espionage, or cyber extortion. I would advise the students not to keep any sensitive or
Yes, yes.
personal information on your mobiles, including pictures, because someone hacks into your mobiles can use that against you to extort money or in any way torture you. That comes under the aspect of cyberbullying or cyber extortion. So I would advise all the students to read about cyber hygiene practices. There is enough on the net as to how securely you can keep the data on your mobiles, what data to keep on your mobile, what to keep it out, or put it on a drive, a cloud, which is more secure than having it on your mobiles. So there are certain hygiene practices that students can follow
Yes, yes.
in order to safeguard their own personal data.
And most of the students purchase low-priced cell phones, especially in the backward areas.
Absolutely.
There is a tremendous scope for health hazards if they are
Yeah,
not properly utilized.
exactly.
In that aspect, also nobody is giving directions to them. Is there any regulatory authority to control which material that they are using in the cell phones? Even second-hand batteries also inserted in that.
I agree, but again, unfortunately, there's no regulation in the country which regulates the quality of the handsets being used in the country. India is moving rightly in the right direction of curbing, import of mobiles from countries which are against the interest of India. So I would advise everybody not to use uh, handheld systems which are imported or manufactured by companies which belong to the countries which act against the Indian interest. I do not want to name the country, but again, you would get the.
My sincere appeal to you, Mr. Surat, because you have some expertise in the field, why don't you suggest all these things directly to the government?
No, I don't think I am of the stature to do that.
Because it is, using cell phones is novel today. We cannot, human life cannot be isolated from cell phones. So it is having that much of significance.
Absolutely.
So the government has to come forward and take seriously the things.
No, in fact, I am a firm believer that government is moving in the right direction of regulating all these aspects, making India more and more self-reliant in technology, so that the internal environment is more secure and not dependent on countries abroad. And with the introduction of the data privacy regulations within India and coming up with India government establishing a data privacy authority, things should improve substantially in the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you, Suresh, for your nice interaction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions? The student side? Or all the questions covered?
Ma'am, Mr. Kashyap, yes, ma'am. Mr. Kashyap has asked the question
Please
that
ask.
what internal controls does companies adopt so as to control the malicious and negligent insider?
Well, see again, malicious insiders are ones where it is a difficult threat vector to control. I can't think of a mechanism where you can entirely control the threat that can come in from a malicious employee, because again you're talking about psyche of of an employee, which is very difficult to detect at any point of time. All that helps is in terms of creating awareness levels within the employees, awareness levels with regards to also not only be self-aware of the hygiene practices, but also be aware of what your co-employee is also doing, and notify that to relevant authorities within the organization before an employee or employee with a malicious intent acts against the interests of the company. So it is all about the processes, monitoring processes, and the continuous improvement of these monitoring processes that the companies have to come out with. And that's the role which is being generated within the organizations, the role of an information security manager. There is a separate department known as Information Security Management System, ISMS, which does all these activities of assessing and treating risks within the organization. It could be treating the people risk, the process risk, as well as the technology risk. I hope I answer your question.
Yes, sir. Sir, and one more question from Dr. JC Reddy. Bitcoin is legal in India. Is there any law to regulate it?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sir, Bitcoin is legal in India. Is there any law to regulate it?
No, well, so again, the legality of Bitcoin is still a big question mark, because there are two different opinions within the society whether it should be made a legal currency or it should not be. But majority of the population within the regulatory space thinks against Bitcoin as being a future currency. But again, you never know, it could emerge with many. I mean, there are companies which are adopting Bitcoin as a means of exchanging money, so you never know. But again, yeah, so Bitcoin is something which is not regulated yet in India, and it's not legalized in India yet. It is just an opinion from various sections that it should be legalized or not. But again, government is yet to come out with its stance around Bitcoin yet. So yeah, so if you're counting on Bitcoin and looking at acquiring it, it's a double-edged sword that you're sitting on, because Bitcoin is a highly volatile asset to have. There was this particular article in the recent times whether you should have gold or Bitcoin as the future investment vehicle. But again, a lot of sections of the society were against Bitcoin. So yeah, so that's the overall opinion about Bitcoin, or any cryptocurrency for that matter of fact.
Thank you, sir. And sir, one more question from Dr. Lalita Ramakrishnan, ma'am. Cyber attacks have not spread in educational institutions and universities. Please suggest safety measures.
No, well, a lot of ma'am, for your informational, there are some reputed institutions within US which have fallen prey to ransomware attacks. There are certain communities within US where they have had to pay ransom monies to hackers to get the whole community or the municipalities' computer systems decrypted. So educational systems are also equally falling prey to cyber attacks. It's just that these are things which are not being written about so eloquently in the public domain. But again, if you dig deep in the public domain, you will find enough examples of educational institutions falling prey to cyber attacks. Mechanisms, again, it is the same. It is the process of, information security management systems, which traverses processes and also creation of awareness within the student community, because that's a huge population that a university is handling. So cyber hygiene awareness trainings have to be equally made a part of a curriculum for students, not only for their currency as a student within the university, but for their future as well. Cyber awareness is a critical requirement nowadays.
Suraj.
Hello, sir. Anand, sir. How are you?
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
A small question. You are told about social engineering fraud.
Yes.
What is social engineering fraud and how to overcome this fraud?
Well, social engineering frauds are where hackers either impersonate a company executive in order to affect a fund transfer from a company. Like, for example, I'll give you the example of a social engineering fraud. A hacker, I can hack into a company system and lie low in that company systems and computer systems. And I can observe the kind of various financial transactions that can happen by hijacking the email systems of those companies. So by doing that, I'll come to know which individual or which authority within that particular organization has the authority to authorize and effect fund transfers. So what would I do? And I will start learning the way this particular individual communicates, his email styles and everything. So one day when I'm aware of how this individual can communicate, his style of communicating, I can impersonate this particular person by mirroring his email ID and sending a instruction to the finance department to transfer a particular amount of money as a part of an engagement or a part of a merger and acquisition deal as an escrow amount or something. And the way that I channelize this communication is where I set a lot of priority and urgency to the whole affair, that it has to be transferred within the next half an hour. It has to be transferred within the next 1 hour. So the finance department doesn't even care as to whether to go and check back the authenticity of this authentication. But again, it just gets transferred. And there are many companies which have suffered these kinds of losses. And then they realize, and the CEO and that particular authority says, I never gave you the instruction. And then the company realizes that they've sent about $1 million or $100,000 or $200,000 as part of an engagement. By then, the whole amount would have got siphoned off from the account to which it is transferred. So these kinds of losses are known as social engineering fraud losses.
Okay.
And there are invoicing frauds also. I am paying off my vendor. For example, university has its vendor and vendor sends a bill with an invoice to transfer money for the service it has provided. I, as a hacker, I can manipulate that invoice to replace the wire transfer detail with mine. So university will end up transferring money to my account, but again, vendor would be left high and dry. And by the time you realize that, I would have even spent that money on an iWatch. Okay. So these are the kind of social engineering frauds that organizations are seeing across the globe.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, Kashyap has asked one more question. Can continuous audit help avoid this risk? And career prospects of computer information system auditor, will it reduce the cyber attack risk?
Absolutely. So continuous monitoring is an important, essential part of the whole information security management systems within the company, because again, your threats are evolving. You cannot keep your processes the same, because again, there might be some risk or threat vector which could circumvent a particular process that you would have set. So you have to always continuously monitor the efficacy of your existing cybersecurity measures, the processes that you've set within the company, and then keep evolving. And so what companies do is they continuously periodically have a sitting where they review their management processes around information security to check whether they are mature enough to handle the evolving risks. So this is very important. And yeah, information security managers play a very key role in this, the whole activity. Their the whole function, their whole job is to do this on a daily basis, to keep monitoring, to keep evolving, and to keep checking and to keep improving the security measures within the company.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, and what are all the trends in cyber claims in banking sector when compared to other sectors in India? Because it is simultaneously getting cyber attacks in banking sector alone. So,
yeah, so banking sector is seeing a whole host of sophisticated attacks ranging from ransomware breach campaigns to malware attacks to phishing campaigns to SWIFT hijackings. You should read about SWIFT hijacking, where interbank transfers of funds can be diverted by hacking into SWIFT transfer codes and manipulating them. This is what happened with I think the Bangladesh Bank and Bank of India. I think you can read about these examples and read about Cosmos Bank breach incident. You will understand the level of sophistication and how these breach campaigns are being directed against banks.
sir, and who is the market leader in cyber risk insurance in India?
Well, there are various players. I wouldn't say a market leader, but again, yeah, companies have their own market shares. I don't want to take names and say this is the company that is the market leader. There are key players in the market like Tata AIG, HDFC Ergo, ICICI Lombard, Bajaj Allianz. Then you have Raheja QB. These are some of the and New India. These are some of the companies which are writing most of the cyber risk proposals in India and have their own market shares. It keeps going up and down, but again, yeah, these are the top 5 insurers in India who are writing about 85%, more than 85% of the business in India.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And one more question from Srinivasa Perimalla. Sir, what are all the few exclusions under cyber liability insurance?
Well, that would need a whole different session altogether, because again, if I go into exclusions, I will have to explain what those exclusions are. Maybe we can, structure or have another session for MBA insurance management students itself to understand what cyber risk insurance is altogether as a separate session. We can do that, not an issue.
Thank you, Suraj. Any more questions from our students?
Sir, ma'am,
I request
sir has exclaimed every questions. Some questions are repeated. Sir explained every questions. Thank you, sir.
I now request the organizing committee, our dean, our HOD, to switch on the videos for a screenshot.
Maybe we can take as many as 40. I think all those who are on the screen, all of you, please, 1 minute you can...
Kindly switch on your videos for a minute, as our dean said.
So all of you, some more. Please. Few more are there.
Some more participants, kindly switch on your videos.
Hello. Yeah, very good. I think good coverage, madam. Now you can take some photographs. Good coverage.
Yes.
Happy?
Yes, sir. We are taking screenshots to be sent to the press. This is going to be covered by, this event will be covered by the English dailies, Malayalam, Telugu, Tamil. These are the languages which we intend to cover. Also, we are sending the clippings to several TV channels because the student organizing committee and our proud alumnus, Mr. Suraj, are to be well covered in the press. And this is our intention. Kindly, student organizing committee, please take screenshots I think you have done that. I've also taken some screenshots. Thank you so much, Suraj, for your smile.
It's nice. I
Shall we
think,
now wind up the session?
thank you. Thank you. I think it's good. Good coverage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for being.
for spending your evening with our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I now request the student to deliver his vote of thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Myself, I am Sri Krishna K, second year MBA student, Pondicherry University Polytechnic campus. So I felt it is a very good session by Suraj sir. So on behalf of the Department of Management and the entire fraternity of the institution, I would like to extend most sincere thanks to the resource person, Suraj Thilwar, Assistant Vice President, Minister Watson, it is a leading insurance broker in India, for accepting our invitation and to deliver this intellectual talk in our executive webinar series, which is graceful briefing about the cyber new era of corporate control. Thank you, sir, once again for broadening our perspective on the subject. We are highly grateful to below Dean, School of Management of Pondicherry University, Dr. K. Chandrasekhar Rao sir, for taking this event to the next level with the person. And it is commendable, and we hope we can inculcate at least a share of it. And I would also like to thank our beloved center head and the head of the department, Dr. S.S. Nusma, for his moral support and the encouragement. And we are grateful to our senior professor, Lalita Ramakrishnan ma'am, for taking this initiative and guiding our students at the back end and for planning this series of executive webinars from across the globe during this COVID period for our benefit. So we can feel the proud moment which she would be having students doing well in the industry, and we, the second and fourth semester students, like assured that we also taking inspiration from alumni during this meeting. So and I also happy to express our affordable thanks to our distinguished teachers who joined today, Dr. Bairam sir, Dr. D.S. Malina, for this executive webinar series. And it made a great success with the engagement and kind persons and also extending the gratitude to the professors, faculties, industry experts who joined with us today. And we also told this this webinar is just a start of a series. So we glad to get a huge response from you all joined together. We almost got 157 registrations. So we also hoping you will also join for our coming webinars and all. So we value you and every moment that you stay in this temple of learning. We have more to come ahead with all of us joining at the back end and expect you present. Okay, till then, a very good night for you and for you all. Thank you.
So right, I would like to thank Dr. Lalita, Dr. Sendil, Dr. Chandrasekhar for having given me the opportunity. In fact, it's a wonderful feeling being amongst you again after so many years, and it's a different change for me. In fact, to be also talking to the students, aside my daily work of engaging with the clients and the overall tussle of everyday work. But yeah, it's a fantastic experience. And keep remembering me for whatever initiatives. I would be very, very happy and glad to be part of such initiatives. And I'd like to congratulate the university for having brought out such innovative and niche subjects as content to be delivered out of the university. And I look forward to seeing many more such industry interfaces. Thank you all, and all the best.